Hello and welcome to Firstpost America, your global pit stop for the latest news and headlines from the United States and around the world. I'm Eric Ham coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We'll get you a roundup of all the day's top stories, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. Israel's army says it's battling Hamas terrorists around two Gaza hospitals, Al-Shifa and Al-Amal. Israel claims 20 fighters killed in close quarter combat. Japan and the United States discuss ways to boost military cooperation. This after reports that Washington's operations in the country could be strengthened to counter China. After uncertainty and political turbulence, Senegal's opposition candidate inches towards victory in the presidential election just over a week after his release from prison. Over 130 school children kidnapped by gunmen in Nigeria's Kaduna State released unharmed after days of national outcry over one of the biggest attacks on a school. The European Union hit Apple, Meta, and Google parent company Alphabet with its first ever probe under a mammoth digital law, which could lead to big fines against the U.S. tech giants. We begin with an update from Moscow, where 2 days after the concert hall attack, Russia has charged 4 men it says are responsible for killing at least 137 people. Courtroom images and video show the suspects bandaged and bruised, with one seemingly disoriented and struggling to keep his eyes open. They've been remanded in pretrial custody until late May, and all 4 suspects have been charged with terrorism and face life in prison. The Moscow District Court said 3 of the 4 have pleaded guilty to all charges, and a total of 11 people have been detained by Russian authorities. The Islamic State has claimed responsibility and released footage of the attack, and the video appears to have been filmed from the lobby of the concert hall. It reportedly shows the gunmen with blurred faces and garbled voices firing assault rifles in the lobby of the concert hall as victims lay helpless on the floor. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin has vowed to punish those behind the barbaric attack. However, so far he has made no public reference to the Islamic State's claims of responsibility. In fact, reports say Russia is instead pursuing a Ukrainian link. The Russian president also said that the attackers tried to escape to Ukraine.
Now, the main thing is not to let those behind this bloodbath to commit new crimes. Regarding the investigation of this crime and results of operational search actions, I can now say the following. All 4 of the actual performers of the act of terror, all those who shot and killed people, were found and detained. They tried to hide and were moving in the direction of Ukraine. There, according to the preliminary data, they had a crossing of the border prepared from the Ukrainian side. Overall, 11 people were detained. It is already obvious that we faced not just a cynically planned act of terror, but a premeditated mass killing of unarmed people. The criminals had a set goal of killing, shooting our citizens on sight in cold blood. All the executors, planners, and those who ordered this crime will be rightfully and inevitably punished, whoever they are and whoever directed them. Let me repeat, we will identify and punish everyone who stood behind the terrorists and prepared this attack against Russia, against our people.
Now, Ukraine has denied any role in the attack, and the United States has also denied any Ukrainian involvement, saying that ISIS in fact bore sole responsibility. Now, the White House also said that the United States government shared information with Russia earlier this month about a planned attack in Moscow and had issued a public advisory to all Americans in Russia. However, Moscow cast doubt on the assertions by Washington, and it appears innocent civilians paid the price as 4 men burst into the Crocus City Hall for a concert, spraying people with bullets. Now Moscow is reckoning with the deadliest attack inside Russia in 2 decades. and authorities said the death toll could rise, with at least a dozen victims still in critical condition. Now, on Sunday, Russia observed a nationwide day of mourning, and Russian President Vladimir Putin lit a candle in memory of the victims of the attack. Flags were lowered to half-mast, and thousands of people paid tribute outside the Crocus City Hall. Mourners gathered with flowers, candles, and toys for the memorial.
A terrible tragedy happened to us on Friday evening. Nobody, of course, expected this. But do you know what I want to say? There is no panic among the people. Absolutely no panic. There is only righteous anger. I want to say that we will become stronger in any case. We have already become stronger. We will win.
My first reaction was that of horror, because this is simply impossible, especially when children are involved.
We stand in solidarity with such a great sorrow, when in fact, this pain cannot be expressed in words.
Meanwhile, the French government also raised its terror alert warning to its highest level following the attack in Moscow. French Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron said the decision, which comes months ahead of the Olympic Games in Paris, was taken in light of the Islamic State claiming responsibility for the attack and the threats weighing on France. And staying with Russia, Moscow's forces have staged a major airstrike on Ukraine, targeting critical infrastructure in the west and in the south. Russia launched a barrage of missiles and drones targeting the Ukrainian city of Lviv. According to the Ukrainian authorities, Russia launched 57 missiles and drones, and Russia reportedly used hypersonic missiles to hit the Ukrainian targets. Ukraine's Air Force said its defense systems destroyed 18 of 29 missiles fired and shot down 25 of 28 drones launched. Russian strikes damaged critical energy facilities in western Ukraine, leading to a widespread blackout. An underground gas storage site was also hit. However, the state-run gas firm has confirmed that the damage to the facility did not disrupt its gas supplies. Multiple explosions also hit Kyiv in the early hours as air defenses destroyed about a dozen missiles over the capital city. Now, the air attack forced Kyiv's authorities to sound sirens and its citizens to rush to underground shelters. And in the south, energy facilities at Mykolaiv and Odessa came under attack as well. And in the northeast, more than 200,000 people were left without power in Kharkiv.
In some of our regions, recovery efforts are underway after the Russian strikes on Friday night. I am grateful to everyone who is working non-stop in Kharkiv to restore electricity and heating to the people. The situation is very difficult. More than 200,000 customers, apartments and houses in the city of Kharkiv and one of the districts of the region are without stable power supply and are subject to rather strict electricity schedules. The local authorities, all services and the government clearly understand the time frame and technical requirements for normalizing the situation.
Now, Kyiv says this was Moscow's biggest attack on Ukraine's power grid since the war began more than 2 years ago. And on Friday, Russia carried out the largest aerial bombardment of Ukraine's energy system. And now Russia has been pounding Ukraine for days, and Moscow claims these are retaliatory strikes after Ukrainian attacks during Russia's presidential election. The attacks have forced Ukraine to seek emergency electricity supplies from neighboring nations of Poland, Romania, and Slovakia. Meanwhile, Poland said a Russian cruise missile launched at Ukraine's Lviv had violated Polish airspace. The Ukrainian city is about 70 kilometers from the Polish border, and Poland said it had activated both a Polish and an allied aircraft in response.
The monitoring involved dozens of rockets aiming at Lviv district. This monitoring also involved exchanging information within the Ukrainian side. At 4:43 a.m., one of the Russian missiles violated Polish airspace. The object was observed by Polish military radars throughout the whole flight. Earlier, as I said, all strategic actions were taken in order to ensure safety. Polish and light on-call teams operating F-16 planes were activated.
Warsaw said it would demand an explanation from Moscow, and the Polish government has also urged Russia to stop its terrorist air attacks on Ukraine. And shifting focus from the war in Ukraine to the war in Gaza, there could be some progress on the truce deal between Israel and Hamas. This as the two sides appear to move closer to an agreement after months of intense negotiations. Israel has in fact accepted a recent U.S. proposal after talks in Doha that were attended by the CIA chief Bill Burns and Mossad chief David Barnea. Now, according to reports, Israel has agreed to a part of the ceasefire and hostage release deal in which they will release between 700 to 800 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for 40 hostages. The hostages will be released will include women, including Israeli soldiers, the elderly, sick, and the wounded. The Palestinian prisoners agreed upon for release by Israel include hundreds of those serving life sentences for murdering Israelis in various attacks. Now all eyes are on Hamas for its response. The same proposal has been sent to Hamas, and it's likely to respond in a few days. The proposal would need an approval from Hamas leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar. In fact, earlier this month, Hamas' latest proposal demanded that approximately 700 to 1,000 Palestinian prisoners be released. Israel at the time had described the demands as ridiculous and absurd. That's because a major sticking point has been Hamas' position that a temporary truce must in fact lead to a permanent Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, a demand that Israel has outright rejected. Now, if agreed upon, this would be the first phase of a 6-week truce deal. Other outstanding issues, including the entry of aid and Israel's military repositioning in Gaza, still remain. The United States, Egypt, and Qatar have been mediating indirect talks between Israel and Hamas aimed at ending the war and releasing the Israeli hostages. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council will vote on a new draft resolution seeking an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Now, just last week, Russia and China vetoed an earlier text proposed by the United States. The Council has been bitterly divided over the ongoing conflict, approving only 2 of the 8 resolutions, both dealing mainly with humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. Now, the new text is expected to demand an immediate ceasefire for the ongoing Muslim holy month of Ramadan, leading to a permanent, sustainable ceasefire. It also demands immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, as well as lifting of all barriers to the supply of humanitarian assistance to Gaza. The text will be put forward by the non-permanent members of the UN Security Council. And moving to the United States, as the U.S. presidential race heats up, all eyes are on the swing states that could determine the outcome of the election in November. Now, while President Joe Biden tours the country and campaigns in key battleground states, Donald Trump is juggling between courts, fundraisers, and golf. In fact, polls show a close race between President Biden and Donald Trump, and swing states will play more heavily than ever in this election. But which swing states might be more integral than others? Our next report offers insight.
The 2024 race to the White House is in full swing. Earlier this month, both President Joe Biden and his predecessor Donald Trump successfully became the candidates for their parties for the November presidential election, making it a 2020 rematch. But both Biden and Trump are on different paths. While President Joe Biden is touring the country and visiting the swing states, Donald Trump has either been seen in courts or playing golf in South Florida. Last week, President Biden visited 5 cities in a multi-day trip. On Tuesday, he visits North Carolina, after which the Democratic president would have touched down in all of the 2024 swing states in less than 3 weeks since his State of the Union address. Trump, on the other hand, has just held one single public campaign since he locked up a Republican presidential nomination on March 12th. Even the events page on his campaign has nothing listed. There are deficits on both sides too. Trump's campaign faces a serious money shortfall and mounting legal bills. The former president is fighting 4 criminal indictments. He is now trying to woo potential donors as his campaign builds its infrastructure across battleground states to catch up to Democrats. For Joe Biden, there is frustration over Washington's support to Israel in its war against Hamas in Gaza, and also over a sharp rise in illegal crossings at the US-Mexico border. There have also been persistent voter concerns about his age too. Under the US Constitution, each of the 50 states hold its own vote for the next president, and the candidates are awarded electors from each state according to its size. With the candidates needing 270 electors to win the White House, the polls tend to be decided in the hotly contested swing states that have a history of alternating between Republican and Democratic candidates. In 2024, these battleground states look set to be Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. In 2020, Joe Biden won all 6 to secure a 306 to 232 electoral college victory over Trump. But now, Trump leads the opinion polling averages in all 6 of these states. Let's take a look at all 6 pivotal battleground states for the 2024 race. Pennsylvania. The state has 19 electoral college votes. In 2016, Donald Trump broke a quarter-century run of the Democrats in the state. He won the state by 0.7% that year, and in 2020, Pennsylvania swung back to Biden by 1.2%. Known for its Rust Belt cities like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania has for decades witnessed the steady decline of its industrial manufacturing base. President Biden has visited the key state to tout recent major infrastructure wins, while Trump is courting the rural white population with promises of relief from inflation. Georgia. The state has 16 electoral college votes. The southeastern state has been a flashpoint for Trump during his presidency and after, and the controversy continues to simmer. Prosecutors in the state indicted Trump in an election interference case after he allegedly tried to overturn Biden's narrow victory in the 2020 election. Donald Trump faces multiple felony charges. Benefiting from a large portion of African American voters, Joe Biden was the first Democrat to win the Peach State since 1992. Michigan. The state has 15 electoral college votes. In 2016, Donald Trump caused an upset in the former Democratic stronghold. He defeated Hillary Clinton. Joe Biden then put the state back in the blue column in 2020. Unionized workers and a large black population helped him deliver a victory margin of less than 3 percentage points. But in 2024, the Democrats risk losing the support of a 200,000-strong Arab American community. They've denounced the Biden administration's handling of the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza.
I don't worship no man, I don't worship no woman, I don't worship any political.
Arizona. The state has 11 electoral college votes. It has traditionally gone Republican in presidential elections, except for Bill Clinton's win in 1996. Arizona voted Republican from 1952 through 2016. One of the tightest races of 2020 was in Arizona. Joe Biden triumphed by a little over 10,000 votes. Biden's 49.4% support was the highest level of a Democratic candidate since 1964. Now, with rising illegal migrants crossings, Donald Trump hopes frustration over the border policy will swing the Grand Canyon state, which shares a border with Mexico, back to red. Nevada, a swing state with 6 electoral college votes. Nevada hasn't voted for a Republican since George W. Bush in 2004. In 2016, Hillary Clinton beat Trump by a margin of 48% to 46%. In 2020, Joe Biden won by about 2.5% over Trump. But the conservatives are convinced they can strike a blow for their cause in November. So far, the polls are proving them right. The historically democratic Latino community is increasingly leaning Republican in the recent election cycles. And lastly, Wisconsin. The pivotal state has 10 electoral college votes. Democrats won the 7 elections from 1988 through 2012. The streak was broken in 2016 when Donald Trump won the state by 0.7% over Hillary Clinton. In 2020, the state returned to the Democratic fold. Biden turned a 23,000 vote deficit into a 21,000 winning margin for the Democrats. Polls suggest Wisconsin will be one of the closest races this year. Republicans see the state as a winnable prize and a key target, with the party holding its summer convention in the largest city, Milwaukee.
And some disturbing news from South America, where the youngest Ecuadorian mayor, Bridget Garcia, was found dead from gunshot wounds. The body of the 27-year-old mayor of San Vicente was found in a rented vehicle. Garcia is the latest political figure to be assassinated in Ecuador. Now, for years, the Latin American country has struggled with spiraling violence. Our next report explores the violence plaguing the nation.
For nearly 3 months now, the situation in the Latin American nation of Ecuador has remained volatile. There's been persistent unrest and soaring violence as the government cracks down on gangs. And the latest victim of this spiraling violence is the country's youngest mayor. 27-year-old Bridget Garcia, the mayor of San Vicente City, was found shot dead. Her body and that of her communications director, Jairo Lu, was found in a rented car in Manabí province. Investigators say the shots were not fired from the outside of the vehicle but inside. And now they are tracking the car's GPS to get more details. The government is pushing the investigators to fast-track the probe in the case. Garcia was part of former President Rafael Correa's Citizen Revolution Movement Party. The party's presidential candidate in the recent elections, Luisa Gonzalez, took to social media to condemn the killing. She said, "Nobody is safe in Ecuador." Her remarks highlight the long-prevailing gang violence in Ecuador. Garcia is not the only Ecuadorian leader who has been assassinated in recent times. Last year, in August, presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio was also shot dead. A sharp anti-corruption and anti-gangs campaigner, Villavicencio was killed by one of the local gangs. Ecuador was once a relatively safe and stable country. But the growing presence of Colombian and Mexican drug cartels has shot up crime in recent years. Narco bosses use Ecuadorian ports to ship drugs to the United States and Europe. To battle the growing violence, Ecuador President Daniel Noboa declared a state of emergency in January. He declared the country to be in a state of war against the gangs, after notorious gang leader Adolfo Fito Macias escaped from prison. Since then, the Ecuadorian military has been deployed in the streets. The military has also taken charge of the country's prisons after they were marred by a string of gang riots that left some 460 people dead. The government claims that its so-called Phoenix Plan has been successful in reducing violence, as the security forces have carried out some 165,000 operations. They claim to have made more than 12,000 arrests and killed 15 people considered to be terrorists. The government has also designated 22 criminal groups as terrorist organizations and has seized some 65 tons of drugs since January. The Noboa government said it would reinforce public order policies until it achieved safety, but the violence has shown no signs of dying down. Killings of prominent leaders have become more frequent. Is the Ecuadorian government doing enough to restore normalcy? And can Ecuador dream of becoming the bastion of peace in Latin America once again?
That's our show for today. We certainly thank you so much for joining with us. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks again for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.